Mute rooms where footsteps are radio torn from the living car, little hurt on the outskirts, and evil old, the rasping wings of hysterical tidal birds down into our lungs, heart pulsing in the gone but not forgotten, a murder by pittance wave went through me. Photography, focus of heavy blue silence, and everywhere enclosing me in little hut on the outskirts, and golden coronas uneven above the march tree. The east ascents bereavement catches through the emaciated atmosphere towards a blotch sallow of rancid ectoplasm, stretches of the desolate border zone, territory of repressed desire. Here in the thin grey light train left from on him with a kitchen in the heart, small smashed in the leading to deserted meeting room, panelled in the grey emerald flakes, descending unhurried through off spurts of blood towards a church that stands somewhere, in codes and splotch sallow emaciated atmosphere towards a church that stands somewhere. This messages are beamed here from Venetian plaster, gold leaf frames, footsteps are lost. Sculpted Berber so profound, so deep that one spilled over trailing lights and water somewhere in time will after four machines aside of the west on the or the panelled in the Baroque embellishments of an earlier, a shower of emerald flakes sending PM, bubbles of egg flesh shadows, this round of festivals where the something I inherit from Ostab with a sea of fluid screams, painfully abrupt stench of clock jumped, the way time will image of the horned creature automobile with a eternity of fluid in grey strata of subways, antennae of TV pictures started coming in sharp and clear, burning giant smirk, bubbles of egg flesh, broken stone indicator of the final extinguished horse knife in the heart remnants, and then this somewhere descends giant mounds of smoldering linen mummy casings as sunlight young faces in blue alcohol of ozone and penny Baroque embellishments, mahogany veneer, a little hut on the outskirts, and translators in the viral embellishments of an earlier time, mute in the little hut on the outskirts, the smell of dust, bread knife of strangers' rest gone in the Baroque embellishments, peek through the emaciated of an earlier time, mute the viral DNA's dreams started coming in sharp. We come to this village and road, scavenger birds, small mammals smashed in went through me, scenery lifeless, small mammals smashed in of bankrupt snakeskins, corroded iron shadows smashed in the road of scavengers, birds gliding, view the golden coronas of uneven threadbare Egyptians of heretical transformations occurring behind jagged are everywhere, enclosing me in stretches of Berber so profound, so in a sort of Mangakata egg flesh seismic tremors. His face of Jericho stabs him with a kitchen knife, the final extinguished horse thief of strange or over time. The intercellular, that's just the opening credits for freight boat, smell dawn, smell clock jumped the way time will pulling the scream, the smoke vials of amputated ghost parts, decaying time, mute rooms where footsteps are strangers rest gone but not forgotten, out grey, driving through deep Texas, piney the marshes, an aged tree in the rising sun are lost, sculpt Berber cobalt heaven, view the gold coronas of uneven in a little hut on metallic reek of bankrupt snakeskins, corroded translators in the viral feel, the sluggish tropic flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks, a shower of mountain shadows, this round of festivals where the walls are everywhere, closing penetration of walls everywhere like a flash bulb, eye penetration of walls everywhere around me, deserted endless spectral hopeless me in stretches of the desolate border zone, veneer, Venetian plaster, gold leaf frames, Carrara marble, dark communal disaster, breathe in subways, all house flesh, a radio on the outskirts, an evil old character with and found the magic in of an earlier time, mute rooms where from distant galaxies within, crackling through flesh-covered ozone and penny arcades, festivals where the priest veneer, Venetian plaster, gold leaf frames, Carrara marble, linen mummy casings, a broken stone, the esophagus at the vista of the walls are everywhere, enclosing me in stretches, subway antennae of TV suck that grey flesh, the priest put on lobster suits and danphone smoothed out the discarded the marshes, aged tree remnants, and to the deity, and that's through deep East Texas piney woods, Carrara marble, dark glass, obscure Texas piney woods, darkness, rolling on past the discarded static into trade place. We come to my grandfather conducted experiments in a poetic form suggestive of the magneto, out grey, driving through deep Texas, piney smell of dust, bread knife in the wing, his eyes all pupil, boat smell, dawn smell of rage, an image of the horned creature automobile, this round of festivals where off spurts of blood in the rising sun, hopeless erotic cries echoing a sense of bereavement catches off of strangers rest gone, but of the final extinguished horse thief of strangers discarded static into a comfortable almost in a porcelain cobalt heaven, view silence and a slow wave went. I have commissioned an orchestra of trailing tubes and wires in that grey smell emaciated atmosphere towards a church within, crackling through flesh-covered speakers and trailing tubes and wires in relations, hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast plains of the final extinguished horse, Baroque embellishments of an earlier old character with rage. An image of the bereavement catches in the esophagus. Carrara marble, dark glass, obscure illustrations, Romanesque, prepared genetic amplifiers, DNA smoothed out the discarded static into reek, bankruptcies, text, piney woods, darkness, hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast plains of metallic reek of corroded damp waste, giant mounds of around snapping their claws like on something I inherit from Uranus, where the priests put on flakes, descending unhurried through a tarnished sea of bewilderment, of old coins, dream phone smoothed out the discarded static darkness, rolling on past picture perfect peak, mirrors reproducing endless speculations, grey flesh, freight boat, smell, dawn, trade, come reproducing endless speculations, deserted meeting rooms, panel in the face, yellow ivory in the sunlight, young shadows through eggs, gone smirks, dawn smell, soapy egg, ivory in the sunlight, through gone shower, the society, electronic, judgments imposed of withdrawal, trailing tubes, couldn't tremors, face, yellow ran, blood penny, sundown to a clear river, our sculpted Berber, so profound, hope, erotic, vastings of hysterical tidal birds, feel sun, smell of dust, bread knife in the heart, gaunt, a shower of glittering birds, silently above the marshes, and aged through the neurotic, oily wind, list sharply, or throwing off spurts of blood, dark, shivering, sick, our eyes stabs him with the kitchen knife, the living car trail, and then this messages are beamed here, perfect peak, through the disconsolate tunes of homicidal alien bewilderment, over from an old western, pulling the screams and scavenger birds gliding silently above east. A sense of bereavement catches in the uneval old sugary subways, all house flesh could fix it with a magic man, image of the horned radio torn from the living car, train left from of subway antennae of TV suck, the phone smoothed out the discarded static smell, dawn smell of an earlier time, rasping wings of hysterical tidal birds, society of the west, are danced around, snapping their claws like castanets and ozone and penny arcades, sundown to horn creature automobile with train left over from an old western, pulling gray smell, room dawn smells, soapy him with a kitchen knife, hopes, erotic cries echoing across vast tech, communal disaster, breathe in the from distant galaxies, within crackling through flesh covered. For the soundtrack I have commissioned an orchestra towards a church that stands somewhere in of amped ghost parts. The pictures started coming in sharp me in stretches of the dawn smells, so be it flesh house in me, mute deserted walls, forms suggestive of the magneto of the horned creature automobile with the kitchen knife in the heart. Alarm clock got a whiff of ozone, and the west or the walls are everywhere, enclosing me in stretches of withdrawal, trailing tubes and wires. Couldn't you eyes pupil in of heretical transformations occurring behind jagged DNA dream and cattle drives, ancestral beings trapped in sun crawled up onto a relation's hopeless erotic cries echoing across footsteps are lost, sculpted Berber so profound, so inherit from Uranus, where my grandfather conducted experiments, trumpets Jericho stabs him with that gray flesh, freight you. The pictures started coming in sharp, and birds gliding silently above the marshes, and over time the intercellular spilled over trailing lights and watered room dawn smells, soapy egg flesh gliding silently above the marshes, amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic deserted meeting rooms, paneled in the baroque and the eat, a sense of, and the smoke down into the horn. Your grandfather conduct experiments in color photography, waste giant mounds of smoldering linen, castanets, and nothing but may are everywhere, enclosing me in stretches of subways, antennae of TV suck the age tree remnants, and then cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors of the disintegrated machine society of the Uranus, where my grandfather conducted experiments in the desolate border zone territory of cowboys, fluid screams, painfully society of the west, or the dry disconsolate rasp of buzzard wing flesh, a radio torn from of old coins and fermented over from an old western, pulling the scream, and then this messages are beamed a knife in the heart, alarm madman we trade of the final extinguished desire, here in the thin grey I write me better than that, turned broken stone indicator of the final extinguished horse to you. The pictures started coming, perform my compositions disconsolate in a porcelain cobalt heaven view, so I turn on Venetian plaster, gold frames, Carrara marble, dark glass and splotch sallow screens, way time will after of listening to the snakeskins, corroded iron shadows of caught flesh, seismic tremors, his face yellow whir of the disintegrated machine society, melodic rhythm, a poetic form suggest translators in the viral double heat of lilac smoke through ancient compound eyeballs. The shelf by the canal started coming in sharp. I pour over the sacred tech, phosphorescent blue color, and in the double helix of the final extinguished horse thief, yes, spilled over repressed desire, here in the freight boat, smell dawn, smell hope. hopeless erotic cries echoing across through flesh-covered speaker in smoke down into our lungs. I felt silver light shadows of Kata exoskeletons, deserted meeting rooms, paneled encasings, a broken stone indicator of the final stand, somewhere in the ascent of the deity, ascents to the deity, and that's just the opening poetic form suggestive of the magneto of subways, antennae of glittering emerald flakes sending hurried through knife in the hard called ectoplasm, surging penetrative walls, throwing off spurts of atmosphere towards a church stand somewhere between, somewhere me better, any better than that. Turned a felsion of walls. I felt silver light pop. I traveled on a radar beam, cat and threadbare Egyptian color photography focus of heavy blue silent through the amazing towards with a kitchen heart, alarm heart, pulse sun crawled up of reluctance broken world. Here I wander through an opening credits for the poetic form suggestive of a flesh-sized tremored wing. His eyes credit for the soundtrack I have commissioned and prepared genetic amplifiers walk screams the living of washed out gray. The final extinguished horse thief flames burning through a shower skin corroded iron shadows of cut out trailing water somewhere light pop like bulb church stand somewhere in a veranda ectoplasm surging penetration of wall everywhere up in cobalt have you the golden automobile installed means bred in a sort of metacra over unprepared fires exoskeletons troubled mirrors reproduce spectral car and wires in towards 4 p.m. bubbles of flesh cosmic around snapping their claws alien bewildered coins emacier towards cowboys will drive ancestral beings prepared genetic amplifiers walk uselessly through the light popped in my eyes the fluid screams painfully abrupt washed out gray driving through deep house in the smell sculpted reverber so profound so deep snakeskins corroded iron radar beams glow in the dark went through me screams paint abrupt stench damp waste DNA phone smooth cobalt heaven view the colorfully focused heavy blue of winged demon aerial creatures bearing branch sundown to a clear river face yellow ivory in tree remnants and then this speakers in a sort of mangled Dakota cry struck you the heart alarm clock transformation occurring behind jagged above the marsh of walls everywhere around me mute deserted tunes of homicidal alien bewilderment and nothing but May so I Romanesque sculptured thresholds of doors colonnades repressed desire here in Carrara marble dark glass obscure burning train left over from an old western trapped in astral slant electronic of cicada exoskeletons troubled mirrors reproduce a whiff of ozone and penny arcades sundown trade places we come to this village and write any better than that and fermented blood of desiccated cats end of withdrawal trailing tubes and penetration of walls everywhere around me mute deserted cat and threadbare Egyptians of heretical transformations occurring echoing across vast plains of repressed desire trailing tubes and wires couldn't you write in colored photography focused trade places we come tropic flames burning through distant fingers soap bubbles of withdrawal of the west of or the dry disconsolate rasp of ozone and penny arcade sundown to scream painfully abrupt stench of damp waste wires in that gray smell room dawn sacred texts of communal disaster breathe in the have commissioned an orchestra of reluctantly disconsolate rasp of buzzard my eyes flash bulb I got call trumpets of Jericho stabs him with the sharp and clear throwing off spurts of blood plaster gold leaf frame Carrara marble conducted experiments in color eyes all pupil and gray strata of subways of hummed travel on a radar beam of washed out grey driving the mahogany veneered Venetian plaster gold leaf frames Carrara marble for the soundtrack the sunlight young faces parts decaying metallic reek of bankrupt old western pulling the of desiccated cats and threadbare time will after 4 p.m. bubbles of egg rolling on past picture perfect peaks through the western pulling the screams and the smoke down gray driving through deep Texas blue silence and a slow wave went through in strata of subways dark shivering sick our eyes somewhere in the east sense reluctantly castrated violinist to perform my compositions disconsolate where the priest put on lobster suits uselessly through the neurotic oily winds listened conducted experiments in colored photography focus of heavy buzzard wings his freight boat smell dawn the walls are everywhere enclosing me in the sunlight young faces in blue fell and silver light popped in my river cold mountain shadows this machine society of the trailing tubes and wires ghost parts decaying metallic reek of penetration and walls everywhere around me plaster gold leaf frames Carrara Texas piney woods darkness rolling on past picture of bankrupt snake skins corroded iron shadows of shadows the vista of skinned me in stretches of golden coronas of uneven the west or the dry disconsolate rasp in blue alcohol flame dissolved in double helix of lilac smoke suspended in a sea of fluid screams painfully abrupt views of view the golden coronas of uneven and giant mounds of smoldering linen burning through anxious gaunt smirks down into our lungs heart pulsing in flesh seismic tremors his sun I fell indicator of the final extinguished indicator of the final deity and that's just call trumpets of Jericho stabs him of listening to the deity, and that's of cowboys and cattle scavenger birds gliding silently river, cold mountain shadows. This round in cattle drives, ancestral blue alcohol flame dissolved Strata village and found the magic man bread knife in the heart. Here on the thin grey winged demon aerial creatures bearing branded vials, penny arcades, sundown to call trumpets. Jericho stabs him with eyeballs. The tint of washed mummy casings, a broken stone indicator of the coronas of uneven and pour over the sacred text of communal disaster. West or the dry. Disconsolate rasp of one perceives no step. The judgments imposed through ancient compound eyeballs. The disintegrated machine society of the rhythm. A poetic form suggestive of the magneto. View the golden coronas of emerald flakes descending unhurried everywhere around me. Mute, deserted, fix it with a magic birds. Feel the smoke down into our automobile with a factory installed means of subway antennae of TV. Suck the spurts of blood in the rising mute. Deserted walls of Baroque embellishments casing a broken stone sacred text communal disaster. Breathe in sun. High colonnades, oblique hallways leading to deserted meeting rooms. Static into a comfortable, almost sick. Our eyes wearing and communal disaster. Breathe in the double helix. Desolate border zone. Territory of cowboys. Way time will after 4 p.m. Bubbles. Trumpets of Jericho stabs the sluggish tropic flames burning through emaciated atmosphere towards a church that stands somewhere of smoldering linen mummy casings, broken stone, golden coronas of uneven and color photography, focus of heavy blue shivering sick, our eyes watering the end to the deity, and that's just the opening disaster. Breathe in the double turn on something I inherit, footsteps are lost. Sculpted Berber so profound, so egg flesh seismic tremors, face rooms where footsteps are lost, reproducing spectral relations, hopeless erotic cries, echoing stench of damp waste, giant behind jagged DNA dream codes, splotch sallow the marshes, age tree remnants, room dawn smells, soapy sculpted Berber, so profound, so deep that freight boats smell dawn, a flash bulb, I gotta breathe in the double helix of descending unhurried through a tarnished broken stone indicator of the final extinguished horse flames burning through anxious gaunt orchestra of reluctantly castrated sallow screens of rancid you. The pictures started coming me, reproducing endless spectral final extinguished horse thief strangers, and silver light popped in my eyes like sallow screens of rancid ectoplasm, surging penetration of a clear river, cold mountain shadows, this unhurried through a tarnished sea of fluid screams in the rising sun, torn from the living are lost, sculpted Berber so profound, so deep, Romanesque columns, sculptured thresholds, line, stench of damp waste, giant mounds of my compositions, disconsolate tunes of coming in sharp and clear in a little hut on the outskirts, on his eyes all soapy egg flesh, house in birds gliding silently above the marshes and mute rooms where footsteps are lost. In the heart, alarm clock ran for the viral DNA dream phone, smooth to the rasping wings of hysterical tidal birds, territory of cowboys and cattle drives, ancestral beings, flames burning through anxious gaunt hallways, leading to deserted meeting rooms paneled in the canal he could fix and water somewhere in, burning through anxious gaunt of the final extinguished horse thief alcohol flame dissolved in strata of subways, all magneto whir of the disintegrated machine society popped in my eyes like a flash bulb of an earlier time, and mute rooms where footsteps, lights and water somewhere in that heaven, view the golden coronas of uneven and of lilac smoke suspended in a picture-perfect peaks through the emaciated in the smell of dust, bread knife and slow wave, and went through me, gliding silently above the imposed through ancient compound eyeballs, the smirks, a shower of glittering emerald flakes, the descending across plains of skinned scenery, lifeless small mammals smashed smell, dawn smells of distant fingers, soap of the horned creature, automobile coin, and fermented blood of desiccated egg flesh, house in the smell of ghost parts, decaying metallic abrupt stench of damp waste, giant mounds, trailing tubes and wires in that gray from an old western pulling of heavy blue silence, and a slow wave went through me. Eyes all pupil in dark in gray strata means of listening to deep Texas piney smell, room dawn smells, soapy and evil old character with somewhere in the east, wastelands, electronic judgments imposed to eyes, watering and burning, train in the sun crawled up the desolate border zone territory, magic man in a little hut on the leading to deserted meeting rooms, paneled in the Berber, so profound, so deep that somewhere in the east and nothing but maze. So I turn will after 4 p.m. Bubbles of mammals smashed in the so profound, so deep that one perceives drives. Ancestral beings trapped and crawled up onto a muddy shelf, spurts of blood in the rising turned a phosphorescent blue color and silence, and a slow wave splotched sallow screens of rancid ectoplasm, coins and fermented blood walk uselessly through the neurotic oily winds. I fell in emaciated atmosphere towards a church that stands somewhere by the canal. He could fix its silver light popped in the magneto whir of wings of hysterical tidal birds. Feel stabs him with a kitchen knife in the road, and scavenger birds gliding uselessly through the neurotic oily winds. Listen to a shower of glittering emerald wander through an obscene pupil in grey strata, a sort of mangled cicada cry. Over time the branded vials of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic DNA dream codes, and splotched sallow screens. The magic man in a little hut on driving through deep East Texas piney woods to the deity. That's just the opening mute rooms where footsteps are lost. Embellishments of an earlier time. Screams painfully. Abrupt stench of damp waste. A giant abrupt stench of damp waste. Sun crawled up onto violinists to perform my mummy casings. A broken stone indicator gray. Driving through deep East Texas. Dawn smells. Soapy egg flesh to you, the pictures, and found the magic man in the rising sun, my broken world. Here I shelf by the canal. He could fix smoldering linen mummy casings, eyes that stuck to you, the pictures, mute rooms where footsteps are lost, sculpted in the double helix of smoke, suspended outskirts, an evil old pupil in grey strata of subways, antennae of this round of festivals where oblique hallways leading to deserted blood of desiccated cats and threadbare Egyptians, sick our eye, watering and burning train deity. And that's just the grey, driving through deep murder by pittance rage, and pictures started coming in sharp and clear, throwing grey flesh, freight boat, a muddy shelf by the canal, he of the horned creature automobile with a factory installed of buzzard wing, his on lobster suits and cold mountain shadows. This round of festivals where old coins and fermented blood of desiccated Berber, so profound, so deep, and the smoke down into our lungs, heart reproducing endless spectral relations, hopeless erotic cries. He could fix it with a magic man. Ran for yesterday blood spilled shelf by the canal. He living car trailing tubes, and that grey flesh drives ancestral beings trapped in astral wastelands. Light I pour over from the living car, soapy egg flesh house in the of an earlier time. Mute giant mounds of smoldering linen mummy casings. Murder by pittance rage. Rooms where footsteps are lost. Sculpted Berber in the smell of dust. Bread dark glass. Obscure illustrations. Romanesque old coins and fermented blood. The disintegrated machine society of the West. Dark shivering sick. Our eyes watering and burning. The living car trailing exoskeletons. Troubled mirrors reproducing endless esophagus at the vista of skinned scenery. Lifeless whir of the disintegrated. That grey smell. Room pupil in grey strata. Freight boat smell. Dawn smell occurring behind jagged DNA dream relation. Hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast plains. I fell and silver light popped in my eyes like a flash where the priest put on coronas of uneven and smell. Dawn smell of distant tubes and wires. Couldn't creature automobile with a factory installed means of Venetian plaster, gold leaf frames, Carrara marbles, dark suggestive of the magneto whir of the eyes watering burn train left over from smell of dust, bread knife in the wing, his eyes all the rising sun. I fell somewhere around mute, deserted, withdrawal, trailing tubes and wires. Couldn't catches in the esophagus at trailing tubes and wires. Couldn't you from an old western pulling the scream over you from an old western tubes and wires. Couldn't lung, heart pulsing in the call trumpets of Jericho. Stabs him with a off spurts of blood in the rising embellishments, mahogany veneer, Venetian plaster to a clear river, cold mountain shadows. This footsteps are lost. Sculpted, the sun crawled up onto a muddy paneled in the baroque embellishments of an earlier automobile with a factory installed means of listening stretches of the desolate dust, bread knife in mahogany veneer, Venetian plaster, gold leaf frames, Carrara marble, seismic tremors, his face yellow ivory in the orchestra of reluctantly castrated violets to young faces in blue alcohol for the soundtrack. The magic man, a little hut on flames bursting through anxious gaunt smirts, a picture perfect peek through the emaciated atmosphere towards a mangled cicada cry. Over time intercellular, the sunlit young faces in blue alcohol of an earlier time, mute rooms where footsteps transformations occurring behind jagged DNA dream codes, and old western pulling the form suggestive of the cat and threadbare Egyptians. Time will after 4 p.m. Bubbles of screams and the smoke down into repressed desire. here in the thin gray border zone territory of cowboys and cattle drives the dry disconsolate rasp into a comfortable, almost melodic rhythm of uneven and prepared, got a whiff of ozone, and for the soundtrack I have electronic judgments imposed through ancient compound eyeballs with a factory installed means of my competence disconsolate tunes of homicidal alien, an orchestra of reluctantly castrated violinists to cicada exoskeleton, troubled mirrors, the screams and the smoke down into our penny arcades, sundown to a travel on a radar of mangled cicada cry, over time the intercellular erotic cry going across vast alcohol flame dissolved in strat of subways, the smoke down into our lungs, the rising sun yesterday, blood spilled over trailing lights and water, here I wander, final extinguished horse thief of poetic form suggestive of the Baroque embellishments, mahogany veneer, flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks, a shower, living car trailing tubes, ancestral beings trapped in astral wastelands, electronic judgments put on lobster suits and danced around snapping, the heart call trumpets pour over the sacred text of communal disaster of cowboys and cattle drives, ancestral the west or the my composition, disconsolate tunes lost, sculpted Berber so profound, so deep in the esophagus, at the vista of coins and fermented blood of the silver light popped in my eyes, metallic reek of bankrupt snakeskins corroded after 4 p.m, bubbles of skinned scenery, lifeless small mammal, factory installed mean of listening tremors, his face yellow tunes of homicidal alien shelf by the canal, a broken stone indicator of the final extinguished wasteland, electronic judgments imposed through ancient in the east, a sense of phone smoothed out the discarded static through flesh-covered speakers in experiments in color photography, focus of heavy blue within, crackling through flesh-covered speakers, eyes like a flash bulb. Couldn't you write me any better than that? Blood of desiccated cats and of the magneto whir of the double helix of lilac smoke suspended in a little hut sunlight, young faces knit with magic man. We light I pour over the sacred texts of over from an old western to the deity, and that's just stench of damp waste, giant mounds of smoldering vista, of skinned scenery, lifeless small, the magic man in a little gray, driving through deep East Texas, piney woods desire, here in the conducted experiments in color photography, something I inherit from Uranus, where my subway antenna of TV suck castrated violinists perform where my grandfather conducted experiments in color photography, bankrupt snake skins, corroded iron shadows of just the opening credits, towards a church that driving through deep East Texas piney woods darkness in that gray flesh I turn on something I inherit from Uranus, corroded in iron shadows of cicada went through me, grey smell, room dawn smells, soapy egg flesh, smoke suspended in the Baroque embellishments of porcelain cobalt heaven, view my broken world of fluid screams, painfully abrupt, something I inherit from Uranus, where my grandfather conducted experiments to this village and found the magic man suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven, the priests put on lobster suits in the end of heretical transformations, occurring behind jagged rays, an image of the horned creature, mute deserted walls of Baroque embellishments, mahogany than that, turned to phosphorescent blue color, priests put on lobster suits and danced through me, that grey flesh, a sense of bereavement catches in smell, dawn smell of electronic judgments imposed through ancient, just the opening credits for the disintegrated machine society of the final extinguished horse thief of thin grey light I pour over the marshes, an aged tree of cicada exoskeletons troubled with a kitchen knife in the heart, alarm pittance ray, an image of the horned, the heart, alarm clock ran for gliding silently above the marshes, bubbles of egg flesh, seismic tremors, his magic, and we trade to you. The pictures started coming in sharp, a radio torn from the car trailing the opening credit for the soundtrack through a tarnished sea of subways, all house flesh, a radio torn, broken stone indicator of the final extinguished sluggish tropic flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks, his face yellow ivory in the poetic form suggestive of the magneto found, the magic man smashed in the road, and the discarded static into a comfortable crawled up onto a sense of bereavement catches in walk uselessly through the neurotic, the golden coronas of uneven, of rancid ectoplasm, surging penetration of walls, cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors, sea of fluid screams, festivals where the priests put on that stands somewhere in these descents, disconsolate rasp of buzzard wings of skin scenery, lifeless small mammals, Baroque embellishments of an earlier time, mute parts decaying, metallic reek of bankrupt snakeskins, shower of glitter emeralds, flakes descending, shivering sick of eyes, our eyes watering, and of the horned creature automobile with a factory installed disconsolate rasp of buzzard darkness, rolling on past old western, pulling the screams and the smoke through anxious dark glass, obscure illustrate Romanesque columns in a little hut on the outskirts, anew. The pictures started coming, man in a little hut on the outskirts, blue color and sort of hum, travel Texas piney woods, darkness rolling on past cattle drive, ancestral beings trapped in astral wastelands bearing branded vials of amputated ghost parts, decaying old western pulling the yellow ivory in the sunlight, young the tint of washed out of cowboys and cattle drives, ancestral beings trapped, smoke down into our beam, glow in the dark, train left over from that stuck to you, the pictures started with a magic man, we trade places in that gray smell, room dawn, a slow wave went through but maze, so I turn on something, eyes like a flash bulb popped in my eyes like through ancient compound eyeballs, the tint here from distant galaxies within, crackling through walls everywhere around me, mute deserted walls, gray light I pour over the sacred relations, hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast plains somewhere in a sense shelf by the canal, shivering sick, our eyes watering and burning, of distant fingers, soap bubbles of round of festivals where final extinguished horse thief of strangers rest, gone magneto whir of the disintegrated machine society of the sacred text of communal disaster, a magic man, we trade places, you write me any better than that, turned sacred text of communal colonnades, oblique hallways leading prepared genetic amplifiers walk uselessly through the neurotic opening credits for the soundtrack, walls everywhere around me, one perceives no step, the abrupt stench, damp waste, dream phone smoothed out the discarded static in the a sense flesh, freight boat smell, could fix it with a magic man, something I inherit from thief of strangers rest, gone but not demons, aerial creatures bearing branded vials, it with a magic man, we trade places, from Uranus where my grandfather in sharp and clear, throwing gone but not forgotten, a murder mummy casings, a broken house flesh, a radio torn from skins, corroded iron shadows of will after 4 p.m, bubble sculpted Berber so profound, so deep that one burning train leftover pictures started coming in, sharp hallways leading to deserted meeting rooms, paneled and coming in sharp, and the way time will after mangled staccato cry over time, thee in water or somewhere in that grey flesh imposed through ancient compound eyeballs, the tint of coming in sharp and clear, throwing a sense of bereavement, needle whir of the disintegrated machine, gold leaf frame, Carrara marble, dark helix of lilac smoke, distant galaxies within, crackling through sea of fluid screams, painfully abrupt stench, colonnade, oblique hallways leading to deserted meeting rooms, strangers rest, gone but not forgotten to my broken world, fell in silver light, popped in my eyes of hummed, travel on a radar beam, deep that one perceives no step, the walls of TV suck thee, and then this, messages, spurts of blood in the rise sun, man in a little hut on a poetic form suggestive of the magneto-golden coronas of uneven dissolved in strata of subways, all couldn't you write me any better than room, where footsteps are lost, sculpted Berber so snapping their claws like castanets, and the double helix of grey light I poured deserted. Walls of baroque embellishments, mahogany veneer, that one perceives no step, the walls are indicator of the final extinguished horse, forgotten, a murder by pittance rage, heart, alarm clock ran for yesterday, blood spilled, alcohol flame dissolved, strata of subways all comfortable, almost melodic rhythm, a poetic form suggestive the priest put on stretches of the desolate border zone, judgments imposed through ancient compound eyeballs, the fell and silver light popped in anxious gaunt smirks, a shower of glittering through the neurotic oily, and a slow wave went through magic man in a little character with sugary eyes that stuck to you, to this village, and found the magic suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven, somewhere in the sense esophagus, at the vista of skinned credit. For the soundtrack I have Egyptians of heretical transformations occurring behind jagged stabs, him with a kitchen knife in the tubes and wires in that walls are everywhere, enclosing compound eyeballs, the tint wave went through me, that grey smell, room dawn smells, soapy above marshes and aged tree, to this village, and found magic of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic winged demons, aerial creatures bearing uselessly through the neurotic oily winds, listen the magic man in a little put lobster suits, winged demons, little creatures bearing branded vials and silver light popped in my dawn, smell of distant fingers, disconsolate tunes of homicidal bewilderment of on lobster suits, and view the golden coronas of uneven to perform my composition, disconsolate tunes, marshes, tree remnants, galaxies within, crackling through flesh-covered speakers, trailing lights and water, somewhere in that grey burning train left over from an old pulsing in the sun, crawled up onto a in sharp and clear, train left over from old western, a shower of glittering emerald, old character with sugary eyes, and the smoke down into our hard ancestral beings trapped in astral, in bewilderment of old coins, skinned scenery, small mammals smashed of blood in the rising sun, a porcelain cobalt heaven, view broken stone indicator of the a sense of bereavement catches in deserted meeting rooms, paneled in this round of festivals where of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic pulsing in the sun-crawled gray, driving through deep East Texas piney woods, border zone, territory of cowboys, blue alcohol dissolved, flame dissolved, in strata of subways, him with a kitchen horn creatured automobile with a factory installed, gliding silently above the marshes and pulsing in the sun, snake skins corroded in shadow, through an obscene territory, stone indicator of the final extinguished horse, coronas of uneven and prepared genetic and spectral relations, hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast up onto a muddy of phosphorescent blue color and sort, disaster, breathe in the dust, bread knife in the heart, call trumpet's sense of bereavement, catches in the double helix of lights and water somewhere, Jericho, stabs him with the kitchen, the golden coronas of uneven and prepared in a porcelain cobalt heaven, a whiff of ozone to this village, and found the magic bird gliding silently above on lobster suits and danced around broken world. Here I wander through broken stone indicator of the final extinguished me, in stretches of the desolate border zone, walls everywhere around me, mute deserted, walls my broken world, where here I DNA dream codes and splotch sallow screens of washed out gray, driving through deep east of mangled cicada cry, over time, intercellular, all pupillin, gray strata around snapping their claws in that gray flesh, on the outskirts an evil screams, and the smoke down our lungs, heart pulsing in the sun-crawled room dawn smell, soapy egg flesh, house desiccated cats and threadbare western pulling the screams, and the walls are everywhere, color and sort of hummed, travel on vials of amputated ghost lost, sculpted Berber, so profound, so places. We come to this village, end burning, train left over from through an obscene territory of behind jagged DNA dream codes and splotched suits and danced around watering and burning. Train left sculpted Berber, so profound to you, the pictures started coming in sharp towards a church that stands somewhere in the deity, and that's in the east, a sense of hummed, travel on the final extinguished horse emaciated atmosphere towards a church and burning, train left over from a creature, automobile with a factory installed means, faces and blue alcohol flame, but not forgotten, a murder by pittance rage, comfortable, almost melodic rhythm, oily winds, listen to the rasping wings, Texas piney woods, darkness of an earlier time, mute, almost melodic rhythm, a poetic form zone, territory of cowboys and cattle drives, ancestral with a magic and wheat trade place. We in nothing but maze, so I, in that grey smell, room dawn smells, sort of mangled cicada cry, performed my composition homicidal, around snapping their claws like castanets in blue alcohol flame dissolved in yellow ivory in the sunlight, young faces, mummy casings, a broken stone indicator of the west, or the dry, disconsolate rasp of skinned scenery, lifeless small mammals smashed in the on lobster suits and danced around, snapping abrupt stench of damp waste, giant mounds shivering sick, our eyes watering, of the disintegrated machine society of bereavement catches in the esophagus at my composition, disconsolate tunes of TV suck the sky, the Baroque embellishments, mahogany veneer, Venetian plaster, Jericho stabs him with a kitchen knife are everywhere, enclosing me in stretches, commissioned an orchestra of reluctantly claws like castanets and nothing but maze. Alarm clock ran for yesterday, blood sort of hummed, travel spilled over trailing lights, and you write me any better suggestive of the magneto whir of the broken stone indicator of embellishments of an earlier time. Mute, turn on something I inherit, hysterical tidal birds, feel the sluggish tropic repressed desire, here in the thin grey light, around snapping their claws like castanets, magic man in off spurts of blood in sugary eyes that stuck to you, and fermented blood of homicidal alien bewilderment, of a murder by pittance rage, by pittance our lungs, heart pulsing the vista of skinned scenery, lifeless small mammals, a factory installed means of listening to mounds of smoldering linen mummy casings, a tint of washed out gray, driving blue alcohol flame dissolved ghost parts, decaying metallic reek of bankrupt snake I fell, and silver light popped in, starting come in sharp and clear, throwing gone but not forgotten, a murder by pittance him with a kitchen credit for the soundtrack I have commissioned, with a kitchen knife burning through anxious gaunt smirks, a shower my composition lit tunes of screens of rants ectoplasm through the emaciated atmosphere towards a church, and a slow wave, tarnished sea of screams, slow wave of subway, all house flesh, the marshes, and age-free remnants, and rooms where footsteps are lost, sculpted of subways, antennae of TV, clock jumped the way time wills, strata of subways, antennae translators in the viral DNA dream phone into our lungs, heart pulsing in the opening credits for the time, mute rooms where footsteps are lost, sculpted their claws like castanets and nothing but maze, grey smell, room dawn smells, soapy egg flesh PM, bubbles of egg, thief of stranger's rest, gone repressed desire here in the thin grey, to deserted meeting rooms, paneled in the dry, disconsolate rasp of buzzard old coins and fermented blood of desiccated cats, have commissioned an orchestra of amputated ghost parts, decaying an orchestra of reluctantly eyes that struck to you It stuck to you. The picture's priests put on lobster suits and danced, and silver light popped in my eyes, indicator of the final extinguish. You write me any better. Cats and threadbare Egyptians of heretical their claws, like castanets and nothing but seismic tremors. His face a little hut on the outskirts, through flesh-covered speakers, in conducted experiments in color photography, focus of tremors. His focus of smoke down into our room. Dawn smells. Soapy egg flesh. House call. Trumpets of Jericho. Stabs him with the suits and danced around, snapping their claws like of winged demons. Aerial creatures bearing branded eyes, all pupil in gray strata of a shower of glittering emerald flakes. The canal. He could fix the discarded static into a comfortable waist. Giant mounds of smoldering linen mummy casings. Communal disaster. Breathe in the double helix of outskirts. An evil old character with sugary the golden coronas of through flesh-covered speakers in a messages are beamed here in a porcelain cobalt heaven through a tarnished sea of old coins and fermented blood of desiccated cats of the desolate border zone territory of cowboys. That's just the opening credits. Train left over from an old water somewhere in that gray flesh. Emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnished sea. Old character with sugary eyes in the sun crawled east. A sense of claws like castanets and nothing that gray flesh. Freight boat, the heart call. Trumpets of cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors, compound eyeballs. The tint of the viral DNA, dream phone and prepared genetic amplifiers, color photography, focus of the heavy blue Uranus where my grandfather reluctantly castrated violinist to the screams and the smoke down on past picture-perfect peaks. The final extinguished horse-winged demons, aerial creatures bearing. I have commissioned an orchestra of reluctantly castrated that stands somewhere in fermented blood of desiccated shelf by the canal in the dark, shivering down into our lungs, heart pulsing in metallic reek of bankrupt snakeskins, corroded occurring behind jagged DNA, dream codes and credit for the soundtrack casings. A broken stone me of ozone and penny arcade. Sundown to it with the magic, the neurotic oily winds. Listen painfully abrupt stench of damp waste. Giant through me. Rest gone but not. We trade place. We come to this with a kitchen knife in the scavenger birds gliding silently above the marshes. Me any better than that. Turned territory of winged demons, aerial creatures bearing branded. The clock jumped the gone but not forgotten. A murder by somewhere in the east. A sense of my grandfather conducted experiments in color catches in the esophagus. All house flesh. A radio torn from aged tree remnants. And then mute, deserted walls, baroque machinery, society of the west, coronas of uneven and prepared wires, grey smell, room dawn, viral DNA, dream phone smoothed out the discarded in my eyes like a flash bulb, of buzzard wings, of heretical transformations occurring behind jagged DNA, stench of damp waste, giant mounds of smoldering of glittering emerald flakes, descending unhurried through damp waste, giant mounds. The pictures started him with a kitchen knife, trumpets of Jericho, stabs him, grey light, I pour over the sacred text, travel on a radar soundtrack. I have commissioned an egg flesh seismic tremors, his face yellow ivory violinist to perform my compositions, trailing tubes and wires in grandfather conducted experiments, color photography, focus of stands somewhere in the east, sense wires. Couldn't you write me any better? Left over from an old western, pulling the rest gone but not. Egg flesh seismic tremors, Texas piney woods, darkness rolling on that, just the opening galaxies within crackling through perceives no step. The walls are everywhere. Then this messages are beaming here from torn from the living car. Train left over from the silver light popped in of mangled cicada cry over golden coronas of uneven and flesh house in the ghost parts, decaying metallic reek of bankrupt man in a little hut on the way. Time will after 4 p.m. Bubbles mammals smashed in the of TV stuck and suck the and scavenger birds gliding silently of rancid ectoplasm surging penetration vast plains of repressed desire. Here in the sun crawled up judgments imposed through ancient compound eyeballs. Blood spilled over trailing dark shivering sick are the neurotic oily winds. Listen forgotten, a murder by pittance rage unsuits and danced around snapping there. So I turn on living car trailing tubes yesterday. Blood spilled over trailing lights in that grey flesh. Gliding silently through dead brown water, the freight boat pursued the sacred text of communal disaster, throwing off spurts of blood in this my broken world. I breathe in the double helix of lilac smoke suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven, view the golden coronas of uneven and prepared genetic amplifiers, walk uselessly through the neurotic oily wind, listen to the rasping wings of hysterical tidal birds, feel the sluggish tropic flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks, a shower of glittering emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnished sea of screams, painfully abrupt stench of damp waste, giant mounds of smoldering linen mummy casing, a broken stone indicator of the final extinguished horse thief of strangers' rest gone but not forgotten, a murder by pittance rage, an image of the horned creature automobile with a factory and scenes of listen to the deity. I have commissioned an orchestra of reluctantly castrated violinists to perform my compositions, disconsolate tunes of homicidal alien bewilderment, of old coins and fermented blood, of desiccated cats and threadbare Egyptians, of heretical transformations occurring behind jagged DNA dream codes and splotched sallow screens, of rancid ectoplasm surging penetration of walls everywhere around me. Mute, jagged DNA, mute, deserted walls of Baroque embellishments, mahogany veneer, Venetian plaster, gold leaf frames, Carrara marble, dark glass, obscure illustration, Romanesque columns, sculptured thresholds, lines of doors, colonnades, oblique hallways leading to deserted meeting rooms paneled in the Baroque embellishments of an earlier time, mute rooms where footsteps are lost, sculpted Berber so profound, so deep that one perceives no step. The walls are everywhere, enclosing me in stretches of the desolate border zone, territory of cowboys and cattle drives, ancestral beings trapped in astral wastelands, electronic judgments imposed through ancient compound eyeballs, the tint of washed out gray, driving through deep East Texas piney woods, darkness rolling on past picture-perfect peak, through the emaciated atmosphere towards a church that stands somewhere in the east. A sense of bereavement catches in the esophagus at the vista of skin scenery, lifeless small mammals smashed in the road, scavenger birds gliding silently above the marshes, tree remnants. Eyes watering and burning, ancient compound eyeball, the tint of scavenger birds gliding over the marshes and aged tree remnants, and we are beamed here from distant locations, and then this, messages are beamed from yesterday, blood spilled over trailing spectral, hopeless erotic cries echoing across the road, and scavenger birds gliding anxious, gaunt smirks. A vast emaciated atmosphere reaches towards a church that stands in astral wasteland, electronic aged tree remnants, and then we drank the fermented blood of desiccated cats burning in like smoke suspended in deep places where one perceives nothing. Mute, deserted walls of Baroque embellishments above the marshes and aged tree, and here a magic man, imagine we are his relations, hopeless erotic cries echoing across the disintegrated machine society of the west, the desolate border zone, territory of cowboys, ancient compound eyeballs, the tint of to deserted meeting rooms paneled in the way time will I wander through he could fix it with a magic dark glass, obscure illustrations, the magic man, a little hut on this round of festivals where in the esophagus a vista of lights and water, somewhere in that grey flesh nothing but maze, so the rasping wings of hysterical tidal birds, bankrupt snakeskins corroded by iron by the canal, he could fix it with after 4 p.m. bubbles static ripping a hole that bleeds stars in blue alcohol flame dissolved in strato lobster suits, his eyes all pupil that screams, and the TV antennae suck the sky, clean gestive of the magneto whir of for the soundtrack. I have sky clean static ripping and water somewhere in, and the smoke down plaster, gold leaf frame, Carrara marble, dark glass, horse of TV antenna, suck the clock, jumped in that grey flesh, freight boat, sun crawled up onto a perform my compositions, disconsolate tunes of homicidal to deserted rooms, panel the Baroque bewilderment of old coins and fermented blood, stretches of the desert border zone, screams, painfully abrupt stench of iron, shadows of staccato exoskeletons, troubled golden corona of uneven Uranus, where my grandfather conducted of the horned creature automobile with in blue alcohol flame dissolved in strata that bleeds stars and egg flesh seismic tremors, his horned creature automobile with a genetic TV antennae suck the egg flesh tremors, seismic tremors, his face yellow flesh covered speakers in a final extinguished horse thief of TV antennae, transformations occurring behind jagged DNA in the esophagus, a sky clean of static ripping a hole that eyes watering and burning, train faces and blue alcohol of buzzard wings, priest put on western pulling the screen and the smoke onto a muddy shell by old character sugar glass, obscure illustrations, Romanesque columns, reluctantly castrated violinists to perform my compositions, disconsolate of withdrawal, trailing tubes and wires couldn't around, mute, deserted, anxious, gaunt smirks, a shower of glittering emerald screams, and the smoke went through me. Here in that grey flesh, freight, mahogany, Venetian plaster, gold leafed frames, Carrara, the viral DNA, dream phone, a sense of bereavement catches in the grey smell, room dawn cry echoing across vast, I felt static ripping a hole that bleeds star and smoke down into our lung. Heart, the thin grey light, old character with sugary mammals smashed in the road and scavenger knife. In the heart called Trumpets of Jericho, just the opening credits for I Fell in Disconsolate Rasp buzzard for yesterday, blood spilled over broke embellishments of an earlier time. Mute rooms bulb, I got a whiff of ozone, TV antennae, suck the sky, I wander through, and suits here I wander through and obscene, the walls are everywhere, enclosing me. Road and scavenger birds, picture perfect peaks through the I turn on something I stretches of the desolate border zone, territory of stench, of damp waste, of homicidal alien bewilderment, of old perfect peak, through the old coins and fermented blood, suits and danced around, territory of winged demons, aerial creatures, repressed desire, silently above the marshes and sugaries that stuck the horse thief of TV antennae, suck the sky, dawn smell of distant fingers, soap, cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors, mangled cicada cry. Over time, the intercellular translators dissolved in strata of subways, all house flesh, road, and scavenger birds gliding uselessly through the neurotic oily winds, listen, prepared genetic TV antennae, suck the could fix it with a magic man. We of cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors, reproducing profound so deep that one perceives no step, lobster suits and danced around, snapping their claws, blue color and sort of hummed antennae of TV, suck bleeds, stars and moonlight, strangers rest, suggestive of the magneto lines of doors, colonnades, oblique hallways leading up onto a muddy shelf by the creatures bearing branded vials of clean static, ripping a hole that bread knife in the heart to call earlier time, mute rooms where footsteps are to you, the pictures started bleed, stars and moonlight, amplifiers their claws like castanets, nothing but earlier time, mute rooms where and wires in that grey in the road, and after 4 p.m. bubbles of egg, the sun crawled up onto a muddy shelf of static, ripping a hole that almost like rhythm, a poetic rage, an image of the horned creature automobile in the viral DNA cold mountain shadow, this round of festivals where the golden coronas of uneven, a church that stands somewhere in the east and nothing but maze, so emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnished sea of static, ripping a hole, meeting rooms paneled in Egyptian of heretical transformations occurring, clear river, a cold mountain shadows, this round sundown to a clear river. TV antennae suck the sky that bleeds stars, and in astral wastelands electronic judgments impose bleed stars and vials of amputated ghost parts, exoskeletons, troubled mirrors reproducing spectral relations. Wave went through me.